that vulnerability is you opening up your bank account to figure out what your balance is. That's a vulnerable thing for you to do. Nobody else can do that for you. It's very vulnerable.
I do not believe anymore that true transformation can happen without vulnerability. Because feedback is always going to create a moment of humble pie. It's going to create a moment of vulnerability.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, episode number 1403, One Piece of Advice We Wish We Knew Earlier, ... Today, for episode number 1404, one of the reasons vulnerability is so hard. Happy Friday if you're listening to this on the day it launches. Also, Alan and I are back virtual. Alan has his new laptop sort of kind of set up, and that will be the basis for my story today. But we're virtual. Hopefully the audio quality will be improved. There shouldn't be any popping. We went to extreme lengths to make sure the quality was what we wanted it to be. Alan and I had a fight today. Not really a fight, but it was a gentle disagreement.
Nice hook.
Thank you so much. A gentle disagreement with some feelings shared after. So we were supposed to meet today at 10. And I texted Alan at 10:01. I said, in StreamYard, that's our system. I text him in StreamYard, usually double taps it, likes it, and then he shows up. And he said, BRT, be right there. And 10:05 comes, then 10:10 comes, and then I think 10:15, he's like, yeah, we're setting up this machine, man. Green check mark. Anytime I get a green check mark or any emoji, I know he's trying to sell me on something. So I knew. I was a little triggered. And then so Alan shows up. And we're figuring out the laptop, and we're setting it up, and we're figuring out how do we do this. It's going to be a little bit different today. Maybe we need to order some new stuff, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, this usually is what happens. Alan said, hey, man, are you good? You mad at me? And I said, I'm not mad at you. I'm having a little resentment because I feel like my expectation was that this was already going to be done, and now I know we're behind, and blah, 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 blah. And we vulnerably shared. Now, at times, it's challenging to share that with you, not because of you, just vulnerability is challenging, right? That's the basis of this episode. But one of the reasons it's so hard is because I had to first go through those emotions on my own. There's a reason that when you said, hey, are you mad at me? I had an answer. There's a reason, because for the 40 minutes prior to that, I was thinking. It's like, I'm a little upset. I'm a little annoyed. What does that mean? And I had to admit that to myself, and I had to be vulnerable with myself. One of the reasons vulnerability is so hard, because you can't really be vulnerable with somebody else until you've been vulnerable with yourself. And that is a challenge, especially if you're already thinking, if I admit this to myself, I'm going to have to admit this to my partner. If I admit this to myself, I'm going to have to admit this to Alan. If I admit this to myself, I'm going to have to admit this to my boss or my coworkers or my family or whatever it is. I think there's a reason we don't want to tell other people things, because we don't want to admit it to ourselves first, especially if we don't know what to do with it. When we think of vulnerability, we think sharing something scary with someone. We are also someone, and I think some of the things that we share with ourselves are the hardest truths humanly possible, because that's where it starts. I can't expect you, if you're out there, to have a very vulnerable conversation with somebody without first going through it and almost creating an expectation of where it could go, right? So in my mind, my fear was Alan's going to get mad at me, and he's going to say, Kev, you know how much I'm doing, and blah, 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 like that, or he's going to say, you show up all the time unprepared. Why are you jumping on me? That I had a fear of that. It's like, well, that's not really true. I'm usually pretty prepared, but okay. In my mind, I already had gone through what are the things that could happen here. That's internal vulnerability. It's me figuring out how this could possibly go, hopefully creating more certainty around having the conversation. But the point of today's episode is that how many challenging conversations are you having with yourself? Because I would not expect you, if you're watching or listening, to be comfortable having a vulnerable conversation with somebody else that you haven't worked through on your own.
Well, how are you supposed to share a hard truth with me when you haven't first explored what
Right.
your truth is.
Right.
Now, I do think you can, with certain people, actually explore those hard truths in real time. So, for example, when Kevin brought that to me, it's so different with you and I back online.
I love it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
it's good.
Honestly, it was hard for me to podcast with you in person just because I was out of my element and my
Well,
mic sounded
we were also
different.
in a weird setup too.
Yeah, it was
because
uncomfortable
I had
as
to
hell.
turn to the right to you. Now I'm looking straight at you, and the
I like
cameras.
this.
You know, this is way better. But back to what I was saying is, first of all, and think about, in order to have no wonder why we struggle with vulnerability. In order to have a successful, vulnerable moment with someone else, this is what has to happen. Number one, you have to understand what you're feeling in advance, and you have to express that difficult truth to yourself first and work through it in real time. Number two, you have to communicate how you're feeling to the other person effectively to where they also understand how you're feeling. And then number three, you have to pitch and catch a bit to get back to 5 or back to even or back to on the same page. The chances of all three of those things going well when you haven't practiced this are 0. And I often say this, and Kevin and I, we have a rolling theme for every relationship episode we've ever done where he thinks relationships are about communication, and I think relationships are about trust. And we will disagree and agree simultaneously for the rest of our life, probably. I say this, the reason people think communication is the most important thing in a relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or a friendship or a business partner, is because ineffective communication breaches trust. If you ineffectively communicate what you feel to yourself and then to me, now I'm not going to have certainty. What is trust? Trust is certainty that you and I are going to be good, that you and I can figure it out, that you and I are going to be there for each other. I think that if you can't communicate to yourself vulnerably first, figure out what that means, then communicate to someone else vulnerably. I struggle with the second part. I don't think I'm as reluctant to share hard truths with myself. And I want to be vulnerable even in sharing this. And there's two sides of vulnerability on what I'm about to share. One, I'm going to share something vulnerably that is very uncomfortable for me, which is I'm really good at expressing hard truths to myself. I don't want to say I've always been. After 26, that's when I started really looking inward. That's when I started focusing on a growth mindset and self-reflection. And I think that when it comes to admitting hard truths to self, I think that that's been something I'm very, very good at. Me even sharing that I'm good at something is vulnerable for me. What I really am not good at, I'm getting better, definitely getting better, working on it proactively, is sharing hard truths with other people. So, for example, I am constantly looking at hard truths about my family, about my upbringing, about my friends, about other people in my life. And I'm admitting those hard truths to myself. I'm looking in the mirror every single day, metaphorically and physically, to look at all my weaknesses, to look at where I'm lacking, to look at, even in that conversation with Kev earlier, I was literally like, well, what do you think I should do differently? And you're like, I don't think you should do anything differently. I think I need to change my perception, my expectations. And I was like, well, there's got to be something that I should change.
Everything.
And you're like,
change everything about yourself.
Change everything. but it's all or nothing, right? But that's the thing. Some of it is him and his stuff that he can work on. And then there's got to be something that I can change. I'm good at give me the feedback. I'll try to change it and, move the trend line in the right direction, because it has been slipping, quite frankly. But I think every single person out there struggles with one of those too. Are you good at giving feedback to other people vulnerably, but not to yourself? I know some people like that. I had an ex like that. It's like, oh, so good at giving hard truths to me. So good, but never looked in the mirror. It's like, wait, you're telling me that you think I should change that? But like, what about you? Like, why aren't you pointing the finger back at you? And then I have other people who can give every hard truth. Emilia's like this, every hard truth imaginable to herself behind the scenes. It's like unbelievable. But she does struggle to deliver hard truths to others. And so all of us, I think, are And then maybe there's a third category of just avoiding truth altogether. And I think we've all been in phases where we were just letting everything go and we didn't want to face any truth. We wanted to just pretend we weren't out of shape, pretend we weren't eating wrong, pretend we weren't in the wrong direction, pretend we weren't, drinking too much, smoking too much, whatever it is. I've been there. Oh, and it's fun in the moment, but it's ego, and eventually the chickens come home to roost.
I just never knew what that meant.
Yeah, me neither.
Roost, like a rooster? Are they even the same thing? I don't know. I have no idea.
A rooster is a male chicken.
Okay.
I believe.
I have no idea.
One of my exes had roosters. So annoying.
They wake you up?
Oh, yeah, man. Definitely.
Maybe one day. I think we're going to have farm animals at some point.
If you have a rooster, I will not be staying the night. We had a neighbor who had a rooster, Kev. Every summer.
I don't anticipate you ever visiting any of my homes. That's not something I doubt so. I doubt it very highly. I'm okay with it. Either way, I'm okay with it.
I might. We'll see.
I used to talk about this meme that I saw that it was something along the lines of, I don't remember it, I'll have to track it down. It was something along the lines of when you're so broke that you're afraid to check your bank account. I know there's if you've ever been that broke and now you've made it and you're comfortable and or successful, yeah, you can look back and kind of laugh at that. It's like, yeah, no, I remember those days. I definitely remember those days. Absolutely. Yeah. But
brutal.
It's very much what we're talking about today. That vulnerability is you opening up your bank account to figure out what your balance is. That's a vulnerable thing for you to do. Nobody else can do that for you. It's very vulnerable. So I went down to Alan's twice over the last 2 weeks. And Alan one time
Which you harbor zero resentment for.
Yes, I am not upset about it at all. Alan said to me one day when I was down there, he said, this is the first time I've been somewhat, I think it was something like, this is the first time I've been somewhat impressed with your physique in a long time. It was it wasn't negative. I just don't remember the exact words. He came out of the bathroom and he said, that's the first time I've really been impressed with your physique. You look good. Something like that.
Well, can I provide context, please?
No, that's exactly
really
how it happened.
No, I know that. I need to provide a little context. Kevin and I, if you go back to the episodes in the beginning of this journey, Kevin and I were on top of fitness. You were, goddamn, you look, you were killing it. Yeah. So I'm comparing to the highest version of Kevin that I've personally witnessed. We used to have a studio together and we were on top of it before COVID, and then we drastically fell 100%. And it's all good. So I was trying to say it with love.
Yeah, it was with love. It was, and it was received with love. I was very, very grateful for that. 2 thoughts. One of the reasons I'm working so hard in the gym is because I was vulnerable with being disappointed with the way I looked. Mm-hmm. Part 2, in order not to allow Alan's feedback to get to my head, I recorded a video of myself last night, just going through some poses to see how I looked. My God, don't do that.
Oh, I did last night. It was the worst.
It was the
worst. I was I wanted to get mad at Emilia for the photography. It's not the photography. You think this iPhone 14?
I put it on the kitchen.
The camera's not
the kitchen counter, so there was no. Oh, the cat got in the way. It must have been the cat. The cat's tail. But that was
this lighting.
Bad lighting. The lighting was actually good, believe it or not. The practice that I was trying to accomplish there was I was trying to get more vulnerability. I knew that would be a vulnerable thing for me to look at. Because in the gym, I'm looking really good. I'm lifting heavy weight, and when I take my sweatshirt off and I have my tank top on, I look really good. I look the best I've looked in a minute. But that doesn't mean I'm where I want to get to. Mm-hmm. That is a really good, and maybe that's a different episode. I don't know. The way that you give yourself feedback, I think, has to be based on the level of self-belief you have. That's really what I think needs to be accurate. Because when I looked at that, okay, if you have a level 2 out of 10 self-belief when it comes to fitness, you should be very proud of yourself that you're crushing it in the gym and you look the best you have in the gym in a long period of time. Mm-hmm. You probably shouldn't go home and rip selfies of yourself shirtless to get more vulnerable to say I'm not even a quarter of where I need to be. That's probably not productive for you. The level of vulnerability to seek within yourself is probably connected to the level of self-belief you have. Because vulnerability that you know you can work on is constructive. vulnerability from a place of feeling stuck and I can't do anything about this is deconstructive. That is probably not a good place to be. So that is my next level nugget for this episode. Anytime you're anticipating giving yourself self-vulnerability, I guess, auto-vulnerability, I don't know what the term for it is. Anytime you're thinking about that, I would say, is this going to be constructive, depending on where my self-belief is, or is it going to be deconstructive? That's my next level nugget.
Hi, my name's John Laredo, and I just wanted to give a big shout out to Kevin Palmieri. I had reached out to him. He had been referred to me when I had shared with a friend of mine some interest in doing a podcast, and he said, you've got to use Kevin. He's fantastic. He's the best around. He'll get you started and off the ground and soaring high in no time. And take it from somebody who knows nothing about podcasting other than maybe saying a few things. But as far as behind the scenes, the startup, everything, I knew nothing. Kevin was phenomenal in terms of leading me through the whole process, and not just easy to work with, but really, really knows his stuff. A great combination between leading me through all the stuff I had no idea what I was doing, but also really listening to me and understanding what it was I was trying to accomplish and what my vision is. So whether you're looking for somebody to help you and get you started, or somebody, as I've done, where I'm putting it entirely in his hands because I've got total trust and confidence in him, and he is a true pro and easy to work with, any of those ends of the spectrum, you're going to have a lot of success and a lot of fun working with Kevin. Trust me. Thanks.
There was a digital asset that was just created in NLGD, Next Level Graphic Design. So if you ever need any design work, reach out, please. Our team, oh my goodness. And all the graphics that you see come through, website, the ones that we put in the show notes, all done by the NLGD team. So shout out to the NLGD team. Okay, there's an asset that they created of constructive, neutral, and destructive. At all times, if you are purposely seeking feedback when you're already in a negative emotional place where you feel terrible and have low self-esteem, it's going to be destructive. But if you're constantly avoiding feedback, and so I'll give a tangible example. I talked about in one of my blogs recently how I was watching a Superman movie back in 2013, and I was in corporate, not taking care of myself, drinking too much and too often. I was on the road all the time, so I was eating like crap. And I talked about how when the actor in that movie took his shirt off, he didn't take his shirt off. He came out of a lake in one of the scenes, and he was jacked, and it just was so much feedback that I had to leave the theater. And I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror and just had that vulnerable moment of like, look at what you've done. You've let it go. Because there was a period in college where I quit drinking for 3.5 months. I was supplements. I was working out every day. I felt so good about me, right? And I just let it go over time. And so I would argue, and Kevin asked me my intention before this episode, my intention is to have one big idea that lands in a way that is emotional and vulnerable. I am going to say this. I do not believe anymore, after coaching hundreds of people, if not thousands, hundreds for sure, people all over the world, thousands of hours, I do not believe anymore that true transformation can happen without vulnerability. Because feedback is always going to create a moment of humble pie. It's going to create a moment of vulnerability. And if all you're doing is taking hard, vulnerable feedback, you're going to feel terrible and it's going to be destructive. But if you're avoiding feedback constantly, and all of us know people who do that. All of us know people who don't wear that certain thing, or don't look in the mirror, or don't go to the beach because they don't want to put on a bathing suit or whatever. And I have empathy for all of that, because I've been at the top of fitness model, and I've also been at the bottom of you wouldn't look twice at me. This person's never worked out a day in their life. I've been on both ends of that spectrum. And I'm telling you, the one where you feel good about yourself is the one that's better. It's unbelievable. But there's this asset that we have at NLU of a triad of transformation. And it's interesting that Kevin mentions self-belief. If you have a self-belief of 2, you should only take vulnerable feedback at a level 2. This triad is humility, courage, vulnerability, self-belief. Okay? Humility is I am humble enough to know that I don't know everything, and I'm humble enough to look in the mirror. Okay? Courage is I'm going to stand in front of this mirror, metaphorically, and I'm going to ask for feedback, either alone or from others. Number 3, vulnerability, sitting there in the discomfort of the truth. That's what vulnerability is. Even before we recorded this episode, it's like I was just sitting there in the discomfort of what does that mean about me? Do I have to change the way I do things? What does that mean about Kev? What does that mean about our business partnership? What do I do differently? Do I even believe that I can change that? Especially with how busy we are.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. And then the 4th one is self-belief. So you have to have humility, courage, vulnerability, and self-belief. And if you can combine those 4 things, you can transform your entire life. And it can be a small moment of the humility to look in the mirror at your physique, the courage to actually look at some of the things that are unpleasant, the vulnerability to sit there in the emotions, the uncomfortable emotions of, wow, those love handles weren't there before. I had a picture taken of me at the lake, and it was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, oh my God. But it is what it is. I know you did. It's like I'm leaning to the right to kiss Emilia. So my mom took a photo of us fishing, and it's like, you know how when you lean to your right and the love handle just kind of
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And then the 4th one is self-belief. And if you have the self-belief, you can transform. A lot of people struggle with that last one, so they don't want to be vulnerable. Because if you don't believe you can change it, what if I didn't believe I could change my love handles? What if I didn't believe I could change my physique? What if I didn't? Luckily, the feedback is useful because I know I can go work harder. I know I can eat differently. I know I can track my calories. I know I can weigh myself. And again, we're talking about fitness here, but this is true for everything.
I would add one more thing, maybe a second next level nugget. Stop running from the things that you don't think you can change because number 1, you can't outrun them. And number 2, you'll never actually create the opportunity and skills to change them if you keep running from them. Imagine if you did, and again, I have a ton of empathy for this because transparently, the weight loss fitness thing is the hardest it's ever been just based on the fact that I'm getting older, I have less time than I have. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. But if you didn't believe you could change, you'd run from it forever. Or you'd find ways to mask it, or you find short-term solutions that aren't going to help you in the long term. And that just, instead of looking and not looking at your bank account, vulnerably looking at your bank account and then saying, wow, there's not a lot in there. What can I do? Maybe that is the thing that needs to happen in order for you to actually facilitate the change, right? That's what I would say. Again, heart-driven but no BS, that's the heart-driven but no BS thing. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes the feedback sucks. But there are a lot of people out there that went the majority of their life without getting feedback and they never had a reason to improve things. And I bet you, if you asked them and they were willing to share with you vulnerably, they would say, you know what, I really wish I looked in the proverbial mirror more. I really wish I did. Because now I'm starting to own it, but I could have owned it a lot sooner. And if I owned it sooner, I could have worked on it sooner. I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people out there.
Sorry, brother. I thought you were done.
No.
Your pauses are very powerful, so I didn't know.
Can I add real quick?
Of course.
Since you interrupted me, I'm just going to double, no take backsies. I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Do it.
Maybe this won't resonate with the large majority of the audience, but vulnerability is also admitting to yourself what you're really good at.
Yeah.
So I want to throw that out there as well. There's a guy
particularly
I follow,
with others.
Even if it's with yourself first.
Why is that vulnerable?
I had a coaching call with somebody the other day, and I said, what are you really good at? Like, what are you better than me at? And this client struggled a little bit with answering. He always smiles when I ask him questions like that. He always cracks a smile. And he said, yeah, no, I know. I need to figure that out. And I think a lot of it's just internal. It's vulnerable to say you're really good at something. Even to yourself. Maybe not for you. I think you're probably, for you, it's with other people for sure, but.
Definitely with other people.
I think for a lot of people,
because you're so afraid to come off arrogant. That lands for me totally.
What does it mean about me if I admit that I'm better than Alan at something? Does that mean I have an ego? Does that? I think that's that's kind of how the cycle might work for you if you're watching or listening. So I want to add that.
Oh, well said.
Thank
well
you.
said. Yeah. Living in the truth is the hardest thing.
Definitely.
It is. It's the hard truth, the good truth, what does that mean
living
about
in
me?
But living in the lies is the hardest thing too, eventually.
Long term. Yeah.
That's
It's short term. Short term deceit is comfortable in the moment, but long term pain. Short term truth, hard truth, feedback is painful in the moment, but it's good long term. That's why you and I changed our life after our quarter life crisis. You know,
Yep.
after the suicidal ideation that you talk about, where do you go from there? You have to face all the truth. For me, my car accident, that was it. That was our moment of truth. That's why we call it a moment of truth. It's like that in every film, every story, there's that moment of truth. We all know. That's what inspires human beings. It's unbelievable. Like, think of your favorite movie. Everyone out there listening, watching. What's your favorite movie? Think of that moment of truth, of vulnerability, where the hero, finally takes their power back and does something about it. I was watching Black Panther. Amazing. They did such a good job with those movies, man. Holy crap. There's a scene, spoiler alert, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a scene where he stands up to his father, and it was like, it gave me chills, man. Unbelievable. And after that, he went back and did what was right, because he finally owned the truth that his father did the wrong thing, that his father wasn't the hero he thought he was. And of course, that resonated with me because of some stuff. But these moments of truth are super, super powerful. I think that is all I have. Next level nugget would be, you cannot transform without vulnerability. If you can't be vulnerable, proactive, life is going to throw bricks at you. And I don't think you can really change without vulnerability either. I never used to think that. I don't think there's a lot you can change. Like, let's say I was just like, oh no, screw Kevin. What am I going to change? You know what I mean? I'm just going to... Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Which would bring different
I'm going to come
vulnerability.
down. I know where you live. I was just there. I'm going to come down.
But seriously, real talk. What would I change if I wasn't vulnerable? Yeah. I wouldn't. I would just change nothing and say it's all Kev. And Kev's just being Kev. There's no transformation in that.
Yeah.
I'm 34 years old. I'm more than I used to be because of these things. If you want to become more, you're going to have to be vulnerable. There's no way around that, for sure.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. If there is, let me know.
Yeah. I've been searching. I searched for a long time to find a way. I couldn't find it. So
you think it was the new car
answer,
that does it?
What was it?
You thought a new sports car would do it?
Yeah. I thought many things. Sports car, bodybuilding trophies, whatever, all those things. But none of those did it. So unfortunately, well, I won't say unfortunately because I don't really think that. You'll be more fulfilled when you do start doing it. And there's many benefits of self-improvement, getting to the next level, becoming more hyper-conscious, working on yourself. There are many, many, many benefits of it. And many of them come later, but one of them is going to be fulfillment. You're going to feel like you're in control of your life. When you feel like you're in control of your life, more things are going to seem possible. More boundaries are going to be set. You're going to get more rid of the wrong people, places, things, and ideas. That is my belief. Next Level Nation, we have been mentioning this over the last few calls, and many people have reached out to book a free call with one Alan Lazaros. It is a next level breakthrough session. Maybe you want to ask Alan a question. Maybe you're trying to do a career change. Maybe you just want to get to know Alan at a deeper level. Maybe you want to tell him he's not as jacked as Kevin. I don't know. That's totally up to you. You can take the time to do whatever you want. The link will be in the show notes below. And you can book a time on Alan's calendar, and I know he will be very, very excited to see you.
For those of you who are not on YouTube, Kevin flexed in the middle of that. I also did.
Flexed.
I flexed. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I didn't want people to think you randomly just grunted in the middle of your monologue. Yeah, so I flexed, and then he responded with a flex. So you determine for yourself. No, I'm kidding. All right, the Next Level Meetup, monthly meetup, number 20 is on, is your mental health hindering your growth? The answer is yeah. And physical, mental, emotional, spiritual growth is what NLU is all about. Health, wealth, life, and love. This one's going to be about self-esteem, about how you feel about yourself, about self-concept, about Are you building self-esteem? Are you building self-worth? Are you building self-belief? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you take time alone for yourself? Are you doing self-care? So it's all going to be about mental health, and we are super excited about that. It is on August 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do not know why I had to say 2023. It is this year. The link to register will be in the show notes.
Tomorrow for episode number 1405, a little Saturday podcast. Can you be too loyal? I had a very powerful conversation with somebody recently, and based on that conversation and the things that happened, I thought that would be a very valuable episode to do, because I think many of us assume loyalty is good, and I would agree with you, but I think you can also take it way too far, and it can hold you back in many different ways. So we will talk about that tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Stay vulnerable. Next Level Nation.